four French drivers at the French Grand Prix trying to win this on the final lap. They're three wide again. Guillaume down the inside. Guillaume moves across. They're both in front of Milan and Pouget.
But before you know it, we find ourselves here in the very final race of the competition.
And then they see truck racing and they think, this is crazy. You know, these are 5-ton machines, 1,200 horsepower brake.
Oh, look at that switchback. Oh, he's been mugged and it's going to go out. half and it's gone. Senna Lanson tries to go for the race lead.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head to head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Chaz Draycott Media, and welcome to the first ever Sim Racing Magazine GT3 Winter Tour by Derbyshire Holiday Homes. We are back in good old Blighty for some GT3 racing here with the Sim Racing Magazine community, and it's going to be an absolute blast to take you through this Winter Tour series. We have 8 race meetings coming your way, 2 races apiece, half an hour each race as well, so plenty of sprint race action on top of the fact this is already a really exciting prospect with GT3s. It's yours truly, Chaz Draycott, up in the commentary box with the delightful Ed May alongside me once more. Ed, we've been looking forward to this, well, since we came up with the idea, and now we're finally here. There's grey skies and we're at Oulton Park. It's typically British, isn't it?
It really is. It's a lovely, lovely venue to go to watch some cars go by. I've been at the British GT here once before, and it was so good to watch it trackside, but to get a full view of it from the virtual commentary box, it's going to be a great way to kick off the season for the GT3 Winter Tour.
It'll be absolutely belting. The drivers are just out there at the moment taking on the current practice session, and it's this man that's quickest at the moment, Callum Brandt in the Audi R8. This is the LMS Evo 2 version of the Audi with that amazing looking rear wing on it. Huge canards on the front as well, and of course big 5.2 litre V10 behind the driver as well. But it is looking, well, I was going to say, I said British before, Ed, but it really is looking quite British out there already, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty humid out here. We do have basically a standard setting of unlikely rain for all of the races over the course of the season, but of course, well, it is sometimes unlikely to rain in the UK. That often means that it could be more often than not. Another driver out there in a big beefy Mustang. This is Lewis Ward, the highest placed of the pony cars. Niels Corin behind him in the in 6th place. You can just see him coming almost perfectly in shot through that very same corner. They're all on track together. Wonderful to see. Of course, another thing that is wonderful to see is all of our sponsors that we've had on board, isn't it, Chaz, over the course of last season, and also here with us tonight. This is officially called the SRM GT3 Winter Tour by Derbyshire Holiday Homes. Drew Fletcher has been a wonderful supporter of everything we do, hasn't he, Chaz? And he's really stepped up to be the title sponsor this season.
Yeah, absolutely. I've worked with some of the guys and come together with them for a new sort of set of sponsorship packages throughout the season. So there'll be changes with new videos being launched from them as well, and different advertisements in different places. So you'll see a lot of that as the season goes on, and of course moving forward into the GT4 Challenge as well, and any other special events we do with SRM here on Chaz Draycott Media. The guys have been amazing. We also say a big thanks to Oris Analytics as well, and Bespoke Shelters, Alex Johns and Heinz Mayer. Again, two wonderful supporters of everything that we've been doing here for a number of years now since the COVID pandemic, and it's lovely to still see that support coming in and getting stronger all the time now, with Drew having the windscreen banners as well. So we've got Rob Sutherland saying, Callum in a GT3, wipe me dry. It must be a very seldom seen thing to have Callum Brandt in a GT3 car, but I mean, out of all of them as well, Ed, we've commentated on a number of GT3 races together. The Audi at the top seems like a very, very strange prospect indeed.
It really does. It's something that we haven't seen really driven as the favoured car, but it is perfectly suited for really a race car, isn't it? That Audi R8, the weight distribution of it, the way it sort of just looks aggressive as well. Like you say, those beefy canards at the very front of this beast is certainly a scary sight if it's in your wing mirrors, but right now he doesn't need to worry about anyone because he's currently fastest out on circuit. Drivers are, of course, going to be looking forward to qualifying. Qualifying is fairly important here at Oulton Park, isn't it, Chaz? Just because of how narrow the circuit is, especially at places like this.
Yeah, it really is. We look here at Jake Cranstone, newly crowned champion of the Sim Racing Magazine GT4 Challenge. He's in the Mercedes for this championship, the big brutal AMG GT3 Evo. Fantastic looking race car with its massive anglerfish gob on the front of it. I think he's still got the standard spec map on that car because it seems like the back end of it is somewhat semi-metallic. We've got a good friend of mine just behind him there in the Audi R8, Francois Brandet. He makes his way into the series. He and his teammate Matt Hoyland for DXT Motorsports have come over from the Evolution Sim Racing Championships. They race in GT3s and GT4s over there. Someone's having a whale of a time with their connection at that part of the circuit. But it's good to get new blood in the championship as well. Chris Jennings returns also. Chris has been a stalwart of the SRM events in the last few seasons, and he's running this Lotus-inspired livery on his Lamborghini, currently down in 20th position. And that's another thing we've not really spoken about yet, Ed, is the fact that this isn't going to be the biggest GT3 grid that people have ever seen, is it?
No, it isn't, but that should hopefully provide some quality over quantity. It means that the drivers won't need to worry too much about big pile-ups up ahead of them. They can instead just focus on the battles as they come to them during the race. Of course, we have two races as well over the course of the season. It's going to be a 30-minute, basically two 30-minute races with a sort of 15 reverse grid for the second race of the evening. So drivers that finish in 15th place, say for example, if we use practice results for the race, that would mean that Ben Troutcraft would be on pole position for that second race of the evening.
That'd suit me. Ben racing for Spontex CDM Esports this season. We have a maximum grid of 28 cars, 3 of them missing this evening. I believe it's Simon Povey, Dan McCauley, and I'm just trying to check the third driver that we don't have out there, and I'm really sorry to said driver for not noticing. Is it Daniel Parron-Smith? I believe it is, yeah. Daniel Parron-Smith not taken to the circuit yet this evening. So we have a pretty big grid still at 25 cars. And one of the main things that's going to make this championship so interesting to keep an eye on is the fact that we have what's known as popularity ballast applied to all the cars. So because we have 28 potential slots on the grid and 9 different manufacturers, we've made it so that if there's more than 4 of any given machine on the grid, every single one of them gets 10 kilos. So if there's 5 cars on the grid, like there is with the McLarens, they all get 10 kilos added as ballast. If they had 6, they'd get 20, 7, they'd get 30, and so on. And it's actually provided quite a lot of entertainment before the season's already got underway, hasn't it, Ed? Because everyone in the Discord has been umming and ahhing, deciding what car to go in before they even hit the track.
Yeah, everyone's been trying to bribe each other to switch away from certain cars to go to the other ones, trying to basically force some drivers to, if they join the series, to join in a certain car because it might give their rivals a bit more ballast and help them out in the championship. It's good fun, of course. It's not meant in any sort of serious or malicious way, but it's just great to see that it's really been well received, hasn't it, by the drivers, this sort of format we're using to basically ensure a wide variety of manufacturers are out on show for every single race of this championship, because that's I think the biggest thing about what makes GT3 racing so great is the variety of manufacturer that can race out there competitively as well.
Yeah, that's what we wanted to really sort of celebrate with this championship, is the fact that we've got so many different manufacturers now here on iRacing in GT3 cars, and why not try and have as many of them out there as you can? You know, you may as well try and get all of these manufacturers on circuit, and we see a lot of this actually. Teams with two cars running actually different manufacturers as well. We have Tim Perry in the McLaren for Altitude Esports, and his teammate Arthur Thurtle just in front of the Corvette. The only Corvette on the circuit tonight. I can tell you all that Simon Povey is going to be running the Corvette as well in the Spontex CDM Esports Sponge livery, which is the matte yellow and green machine, which will make its way to the circuit later on in the championship. Just trying to look at drivers we haven't seen yet. John Higgins Jr. Now, there's a bit of a story here actually with John, and it's amazing that we start here at Oulton Park of all places. I used to go to Oulton Park, 14 years ago it was, the last time I went to see his dad racing in Legends here at Oulton Park, shouting on for his dad, John Higgins. And now his son is racing in one of my iRacing leagues. It's pretty balmy to think how things go full circle like that, but it's great to have him on board. He works with Drew Fletcher in the real world as well, in the, I think it's the Miata Super Cup, I think they call it, which is a BRSCC championship that they race in the real world. I think he's on the spanners for Drew quite often, but Drew, of course, bringing more new blood into the championship. Good to see PJ Clysons as well in this very vibrant machine. He's running as a privateer this season, but again, PJ's another one that we've commentated on quite a lot before, isn't he, Ed? Because we've seen him in the likes of the Sim Racers World Days with the Belgian contingent that used to race with us there.
Yeah, definitely. Sim Racers World, that does take me back some few years now, isn't it? That is a real callback. But that was where I think we first started working together, wasn't it, Chaz? I think somewhere in the Sim Racers World fold. I can't remember if we did any work together before that one. I think that might have been when we started.
That would have been, that would have been the first time that we worked together.
Beautiful, beautiful stories, isn't it? Seeing sort of new blood and some old familiar favourites returning to our screens on Chaz Draycott Media. Of course, just having a look as well, other stories. Ben Idris Abdullahi racing for Salat Racing and Chicane Online Racing.
Yes.
I think formally now partnered up.
Indeed they have. He's in this gorgeous looking Mercedes. Nils Core paints these cars, I believe, and he's painted his own Mustang. If we actually go on the bonnet of the Mustang, you could sort of see it there from the rear end. He's somehow managed to make the spec map look glittery with a bit of noise added to it. And he's added this glittery effect to the stripes. I mean, listen to that Mustang though, it makes a hell of a racket. There was actually somebody in the comments earlier, it was Dennis Van Beelen actually saying Niels is pretty much blocking the whole track with that Mustang. It is a housing estate on wheels, isn't it, Ed? It's absolutely colossal, this car.
Yeah, you really do not want to be stuck behind one of these cars in the race, because we already know that Nils Core is a great defensive driver and he can make his already very wide Ford that little bit wider. First times coming through now for the drivers as we just see Lamborghini off to the side of the road. Callum Brandt, fastest of the bunch as he was during practice, but he's not going to go any quicker sideways. Just about.
I'll tell you what, did well there.
Wonderful save.
He's then, he's put the car in a bit of a less than savoury position there though. He's right on the racing line. He can't move out of the way though because Ben Chalcraft is over on the left, and it's a big old hit for Jake Cranstone into the back. And who else is that going off the circuit? Was that Ben Idris Abdullahi? No, it was not. That was Martin Kenyon, I think, in a Lambo. He went off as well. He got an idea of all of this that went on. I think, to be fair, Ben wanted to sort of half slow down, and then the car on the right wanted to half slow down, and it all just checked up. Martin's going to go ploughing on at Island Bend, and that's not a place you want to go in the wall at all. I mean, you don't want to go in the wall anywhere around here at Oulton Park because they are never far away. But that was a classic case of miscommunication, I think, there, Ed.
Yep, and the tight, narrow nature of Oulton Park means that was a accident waiting to happen, really, as Simon Price in the slush puppy BMW doing a little bit of rallycross.
I love it.
It's a wonderful little car. I have to say, I'm one of the few people that enjoy the aesthetics of the BMW.
Yes.
I think one of the only ones, actually. I say few. I don't think there's that many of us. From that angle, it looks quite nice.
Just seen a comment.
Slush puppy on the side.
Well, this actually follows on from the theme of Simon Price's cars in the SRM GT4 Challenge being the Lunchbox Legends. So it's always like snacks and drinks and things that he's put on. He did a cheese strings livery at the end of the season that was Chaz strings, and it was diabolical, awful thing. But it was very, very entertaining. So he's continued that theme on, because this is the winter tour, obviously. He's added the snowflake effects all over the BMW, and now made it a slush puppy machine. John Tusting was on, well, I was going to say on the circuit, but on the road with me on Saturday, and Sunday, as part of a massive Euro Truck Simulator convoy that we did, and he said that the Mustang sounds like his Volvo from that Euro Truck adventure. And to be fair, he's not wrong. That Volvo did sound pretty meaty and pretty. It had a bit of a whistle to it. Oh, hello, that's Kim Such facing the wrong way in the gorgeous Oris racing machine. He and Heinz Mayer with this fantastic sort of matrix all over it. They do have, actually, there's a bit of a joke about this, a bit of a running theme anyway. You'll see Ryan Penny, the back of his car's got a white rabbit on it, so he's got the white rabbit tattoo as part of the matrix. Heinz's car has got blue wing mirrors because he's taken the blue pill, and Kim Such has red for the red pill. I have no idea what on earth happened there, but PJ Claessens has just had a terrifying moment. I think Kim went to move out of the way. Oh, he's clipped the grass and the car has gone right.
Ooh, yeah.
That is a big old accident, that is.
Yeah. At speed, when you're unsettled, that is going to be a nasty, nasty accident just around the bend, and it was, unfortunately for PJ Claessens. Having a look, though, at Callum Brandt as he comes up to the line, staying in second place. Arthur Thurtle currently quickest of the bunch in the Corvette. And that's another thing we have to say, Chaz. We haven't really seen the Corvette at all during our time of commentating on GT3 action. It's been a car that's sort of almost forgotten about, but it's great to see it out here with Arthur Thurtle. And like you say, Simon Povey will also be up there representing the Corvette brand with his lovely sponge livery. I've got to say, it looks really nice on Ben Chalcraft, but on that Corvette, it just looks so much perfect. It just looks so perfect. It's wonderful.
This is actually going to be the first time that here on Chaz Draycott Media we've actually broadcasted the McLaren 720S GT3 as well. It's my first time covering this car, and I have to tell you, it looks absolutely wonderful. I think iRacing have had a bit of a theme in the past of when they do GT3 cars, they don't make them look as aggressive as they do in other sims. So if you go over to a set of Corsa Competizione, the GT3 cars, they look rough and ready, they look aggressive, they look powerful. On iRacing, they always looked a little bit too friendly. I know it's a very strange way of describing it, but just never quite looked the part. The Porsche here of Christopher Rowe looks very tidy indeed. Now, the other series Ed and I commentated on, the Evolution Sim Racing GT3 Championship, was overrun with Porsches for quite a while. Not that we complained, because hell of a car. But it's interesting to see that it's not quite as potent here. Drew Fletcher and his teammate John Higgins Jr. in the mid-pack at present 8th and 9th, as Brandt goes fastest by 12 thousandths of a second.
Very close, isn't it, up at the front with those pair, Callum Brandt and Arthur Thurtle, trading blow for blow in qualifying. He's looking very tidy, though, isn't he, in his GT3 machinery. We know how good he is, of course, behind the wheel of the GT4 kit. So it's great to see how these drivers, all of them, really adapt to a slightly faster, isn't it? Well, not quite slightly, definitely faster, isn't it? Tuned up version of some of the cars they may have been racing with us in the past.
Yeah, it's mega to see GT3 cars here on the channel, though. I always said ages ago I'd never run a GT3 league, but here we are. And it's lovely to see as well the decal layers working nicely. We've got the Derbyshire Holiday Homes windscreen banners and number boards with the SRM branding on there as well, and then the Oris Analytics wing end plates that you can see on every car out there, the white and red. And they also have a bit of a rear windscreen banner as well with Oris Analytics on them. You'll be able to see it if we go here. They have a little red rear window banner. Let's see if we can go to another car. Yeah, you can see it a bit more prominently there on Dennis Van Bielen's Chicane Online Racing Audi. Arthur Thurtle did a purple sector earlier, but he's had a spin on this lap, so this will not be his fastest. 5.5 minutes left to go in qualifying, and it's Callum Brandt in the Audi ahead of the Corvette of Arthur Thurtle. Then it's Tim Perry's McLaren, Lewis Ward's Ford, Ben Abdullahi's Mercedes, and then Nils Kaur, the first repeat car on the grid, actually, the Ford Mustang. Martin Kenyon, highest placed Lamborghini at the moment. Same for Drew Fletcher in the Porsche. He's ahead of Jake Cranstone in the Mercedes. And this is something interesting to point out, actually, Ed, and this is in no way disrespect meant at Drew Fletcher. He's probably going to think it is, but we're that close, it doesn't matter. But the fact that, you know, we have GT4 champion Jake Cranstone, 9th at the moment, which isn't bad at all, but he's got Drew Fletcher ahead of him, and Drew is usually a bit further down the order in the GT4s. It's just dependent on what drivers can get out of a certain car, isn't it? And with the variation of machinery that you get in something like this, you do see mixed grids compared to what we're used to, and that's why it's always exciting to go from one category to the next.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's great to see some of the drivers who have a little bit more experience in GT3s really using it to their advantage. I mean, Martin Kenyon, we saw him, didn't we, in the Evolution Sim Racing leagues. His pace was certainly nothing to sneeze at, and he's certainly carrying that forward with a good top 10 qualifying result as it stands.
Yeah, he's doing great in this Lamborghini. He was pioneering the fact that this car is very, very fast once you get used to it, and he spent a lot of time behind the wheel of it as well. And I mean, why wouldn't you when it sounds like this? Let's just have a listen for a second. That 5.2 litre V10 singing away behind Martin there in the number 3 Lamborghini. A fancy livery on the car as well. He's just running as a privateer for this season, but he's hoping to do big things and get big points. And speaking of points, only the top 15 score points in each race, and that is also the reverse grid number for race 2. So, as Ed alluded to earlier on, currently you'd have this man, Dennis Van Beelen, who is 15th. If he finished there in the race, he'd be on pole position for race 2. It's as simple as that.
And the wonderful thing as well about where we are, Oulton Park being so difficult to overtake, we could have a completely different top 3 from the first race to the second, just by virtue of how the racing goes around here, how tricky it is to make the moves cleanly. And I think that's going to be the main factor, isn't it, about getting through unscathed, keeping those mistakes at bay, because the walls as well, fairly close, aren't they? I mean, you can see it illustrate perfectly here just how close the barriers are. Well, the cars may slow down a little bit if you go off-road. Not really. You've got a whole lot of space to work with.
No, absolutely not. We ride on board now with Matt Hoyland in the DXT Motorsports Mercedes. He's not got a valid time on the board yet, actually. And he's had a bit of a moment through Cascades. See, the car gets away from him. That's Simon Price. And he's backed out of that lap there, has Matt. And he's only got 2.5 minutes left to go. And there was a car off in the background there. Martin Kenyon spinning around at Cascades and decides to go back to the pits on that one. But
importantly as well, because this is heat racing, they won't be able to finish the laps they're on.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, we use the heat format here, 2 half-hour races with a 10-minute warm-up session in between. And yeah, as Ed says, they don't get the clock doesn't tick to 0, and then they don't get to finish the lap they're on. That's it. As soon as it hits 0, they all get teleported off the track and a slap on the wrist.
So Matt Hoyland, he's not really going to have the qualifying he's hoping for. With the pace he's on, he won't have a chance to do another lap either. Because
no, he won't actually.
You can see he's got 20 minutes essentially to get round. And I mean, it'd have to be one heck of a final half a lap if he was able to do that. So I don't think he will be getting any competitive times on the board whatsoever. So it looks like starting from the back of the grid for Matt Hoyland.
It's a massive, massive shame. But he'll be, I'm sure, looking forward to the challenge of moving forward. It's good to have Altitude Esports back on the channel as well. It's run by a good friend of mine, Mark Fletcher. And he's got Arthur Thurtle and Tim Perry, who have both raced with us before in multiple series as well. Tim raced in the Formula 1 World Championship. Arthur Thurtle joined us for the Winter Tour last year, actually, as well, which was the GT4 Winter Tour that we did in Asia and Australia. So it's great to have them back with us again. Satellite Racing, as ever, well represented. Boosted Motorsport in the gorgeous Boosted Virage colours for John Barnes, Lee Berridge, and also John Roberts. I think Lee Berridge and John Barnes are the two that are teamed up for this because they've all got the same team name. But the Ferrari, oh dearie me, the Ferrari not seemingly the car to be in at the moment. There's only the 2 of them as well. They're both Boosted Motorsport cars. I think that's all that is entered now at this point. Who else? Oh, Daniel Parron-Smith would be the other Ferrari in the field, but he's not here tonight, unfortunately. And Arthur Thurtle has to fly the flag for the, well, American Ferrari, basically.
Looks to be the case for the moment. Just seeing if there are any drivers on late improvements. It doesn't seem to be the case. Definitely not for Arthur Thurtle. He hasn't got any time whatsoever. Seeing where is Tim Parnell up about halfway through. Don't think he'll have enough time. Currently following Mark Johnson, Ben Idris Abdullahi comes over the line. He's able to complete a lap, but doesn't seem to improve. I think this Mark Johnson is going to be the final driver over the line to try and improve. I don't think he does, though. So qualifying stays as it is for the final few minutes. Callum Brandt on pole position. Arthur Thurtle right there with him. That's a very, very exciting front row.
It absolutely is. And for the very first time this season, we have the grid for the SRM GT3 Winter Tour by Derbyshire Holiday Homes. Callum Brandt and Arthur Thurtle make up the front row of the grid. Then it's Tim Perry in third position alongside two-time GT4 Challenge champion Lewis Ward. Then we have Ben Idris Abdullahi and his teammate Nils Kaur. They're going to be starting alongside each other in two very beefy machines, the Mercedes and the Ford Mustang. Jake Cranstone in another Mercedes starts from 7th ahead of Martin Kenyon's Lamborghini. And then we have the two Series 1 racing drivers, Drew Fletcher and his teammate John Higgins Jr., top 10 on his debut as well. John Barnes in 11th with his teammate Lee Berridge on row 6. And then behind them we have Chris Rowe and Ben Chalcraft in the Spontex CDM Esports McLaren. Dennis Van Beelen and Francois Brandet make up the next row of the grid ahead of Chris Jennings and Mark Johnson. Then we have Simon Price 19th and John Roberts completing the top 20. PJ Clysons is 21st with Kim Such alongside him on the 11th row. Then we have Ryan Penny and Heinz Mayer, and really throwing him under the bus with the overlay, Matt Hoyland in 25th place. He's just said in the YouTube chat that's quite simply the greatest debut quali ever seen. And you know what, Matt? I have to agree. But it's going to be Callum Brandt leading from the front here in the Audi. Admittedly not the car we expected to see at the front from what we'd commentated on before, but still, you've got to love this mix of manufacturers here, Ed. 5 different manufacturers in the top 5. One of each, actually no, not one of each inside the top 10, but we've got 8 of them inside the top 10, which is lovely to see. Sorry, 7 of them. I do apologise. We've only got one Beamer. I can't count. I'll shut up.
The variety is still wonderful, regardless of how many we have, because it is so exciting, isn't it? Just to know what might happen. We don't really know exactly how these cars are going to race. We've seen a little bit of it beforehand, but never with this level of variety. And might also see it throughout the course of a season. One car is going to be more favoured at one circuit to another. Could create an entirely different picture from one round to the next in terms of the championship as well. So that's something to look forward to in the future. But for now, 2 races to come here at Oulton Park. And while it is bonfire night, we're certainly getting ready with the fireworks, aren't we? Callum Brandt and Arthur Thurtle. What a front row. Arthur as well does seem to go very well at the beginning of these winter tours. He did get a front row start as well, wasn't it, last time out in the GT4s at Fuji, if my memory serves right.
Yes, I believe he did. I just want to appreciate again the size of this Mustang, because that Mercedes is a big old car, but look at the Mustang next to it. It makes it look tiny. It makes it look like it's a hatchback or something. It's just crazy. So I'm intrigued to see how these Mustangs get on. But we head round the final corner now, and hold on to your hats, everybody, because for the first time ever, GT3 cars are going to be hosted in a league by me here on the channel. And as the lights come on, it's already mayhem behind, but the SRM GT3 Winter Tour by Derbyshire Holiday Homes is underway, and Callum Brandt has immediately lost the lead to Arthur Thurtle. There's already cars running wide behind. There's 2 Porsches right in the thick of it. They're both the Series 1 cars. I think there was a huge check-up on that left-hand side line as they head down to Cascades for the first time. Lewis Ward is in the thick of it in the Mustang. Oh, a bit of a move there. Ben Idris Abdullahi and Simon Price, the only BMW. The slush puppy machine's got sand all over it. Hopefully you can wipe it off very quickly. But Arthur Thurtle, well, I don't know what happened to Callum Brandt at the start there, but he just didn't get away, and he's now lost the lead.
Yeah, Thurtle hurtled into the lead. Wonderful stuff from Arthur there to get the better of Callum Brandt. And that's exactly what he would be hoping for, because the overtaking opportunities, like we were mentioning, few and far between here at Oulton Park. You really need to set them up several corners in advance or hope to force a mistake from the car ahead of you. So right now, that is the dream start for Arthur. And also, he might be able to work with his teammate Tim Perry to potentially box Callum into a position he does not want to be in.
Matt Hoyland's made a few places off the start as well. We noted earlier that he didn't get a time in qualifying. He's up in 21st place right now in the Mercedes, looking at the back of John Roberts' McLaren and PJ Clyson's Porsche. Inside the top 10, there's a few drivers that have gained 2 places. Jake Cranstone is one of them in the Mercedes. Same with Drew Fletcher. And Nils Core and Martin Kenyon both losing 2 spots. So there was definitely a check-up on that left-hand side there, Ed. Just want to have another look at this because I'm not quite sure what happened, but it just didn't seem that Callum Brandt got away. Because as soon as the lights go green, that's it, and he just didn't move at all.
Not seem to anticipate the start whatsoever, unfortunately, and Arthur Thurtle, to his credit, was right there when he needed to be and got off like a rocket, right down into turn 1, and is not really wanting to look back. He's got about 6 tenths now to Callum Brandt in behind, who himself has nearly 8 tenths to Tim Perry. So looking good for the front 2. We did see that they were almost class apart during qualifying. Basically trading times up at the front. Didn't really seem to let anyone else get into that fight for pole. Maybe we'll see that being the same case in the race as well.
Let's not forget as well, rain is set to unlikely in the sim throughout this season, but you can see that the sunlight and the cloud coverage is very quickly changing one way then the other. There's very thick clouds up there, but it's a very high cloud base. So you do get a burst of sunshine here and there, and then all of a sudden back into the gloom. We look back here from John Barnes, 10th place at the moment with his teammate Lee Berridge right behind him. Then it's Christopher Rowe, Ben Chalcraft, Dennis Van Beelen, and then Chris Jennings currently here in the Lamborghini. He's in 15th place, which would give him pole position for race number 2, just ahead of Francois Brandet in the Audi. PJ Clysons has continued to make up ground as well. He's up to 17th from further down the order. I'm going to touch wood when I say this here, Ed, but that was very, very clean for the start of the race, and these guys are all behaving themselves so far. You love to see it. Normally, actually, the first round is the chaotic one.
Yeah, well, hopefully we won't see that being proven right in the second race of the evening. We do have 2 chances for the drivers to cause some carnage at the opening lap, so we will see how it unfolds later on in the evening. Right now we're on board with Nils Core. Beautiful sound as he comes out. There's an off up ahead. Is that one of the... That is actually one of the altitude. It's not our race leader, though. It is
Tim Perry, isn't it?
That was in 3rd place. Tim Perry now dropping all the way back down into 9th place. Thankfully, doesn't pick up any damage, but it was just a little mistake. Tap of the grass. We saw Callum do exactly that, didn't we, at the start of qualifying?
Martin Kenyon had been off the road as well. Oh, he's had a colossal off just behind these guys. Kim Such had also been off the road on the exit of turn 1. I'm not sure what's happened to John Higgins Jr., but he's also been off the road. We missed that. He's been into the pit lane. John Higgins Jr. has been into the pit lane. Not sure if he jumped the start or something earlier on, but he's had a hell of a moment. Martin Kenyon did come back on the track, then went off it again. Francois Brandet has had a moment. Does he lose it? Oh, he's just gone in a bit too hot. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, you know what? He's done incredibly well there to not go in a wall. Please don't hit anyone. Oh, wow, Francois, you've done so well there, Sunshine. How many times, Ed, have we seen a car go off there and end up T-boning that barrier at the end?
Yeah, just absolutely steamrolling through everyone. It's a recipe for disaster, but thankfully it's nice and careful. Out in front, though, we might be seeing a little bit of argy-bargy between the front pair. Arthur Thurtle now definitely looking more at his rear view mirror as Callum Brandt. Fastest lap of the race so far, 0.2 of a second quicker on that last lap. He is really putting the pace down, but catching is one thing, overtaking is something completely different, especially here at Oulton Park. But we know how good Callum's racecraft is. He could quite easily craft a little move here or there.
Yeah, he definitely could. He's waiting in the wings at the minute. There's still just under 25 minutes to go. And right now he's certainly staying with Arthur well enough. We've got a battle going on here. Nils Core and Drew Fletcher side by side through Island Bend into the Shell Oils hairpin. He's going to try and slot in there just in front of Tim Perry's McLaren. Tim Perry clearly not too happy with that one, flashing the lights as they head down. But this alone is cool to see. 3 different GT3 manufacturers heading around Oulton Park this closely. Tim Perry definitely has the pace to be right back up there. And look at that McLaren get the run over Hilltop now. He's going to look down the inside into the chicane. Don't go for it, Tim. Don't go for it, Tim. You don't want to try and overtake really there. You only want to try and do that if you've had a massive run on the car in front and you're definitely side by side before the braking zone. But solid stuff. Really nice and respectful at the moment between those guys. It was a bit close from Drew a minute ago, but nothing too untoward, was it? We've got the 2 Chicane Online Racing teammates together here, Dennis Van Beelen and Christopher Rowe. So 4 chicane online racing cars in the series, effectively. It's good to see.
Yeah, great to see as well. Tim Harry isn't letting that early mistake get the better of him. He's not driving angry. You can see he's definitely a bit more measured with how he's approaching things, knowing as well that there is still opportunities to come through in that second race with the reverse grid. Ooh, big snap of oversteer mid-corner there from Dennis Van Wielen. Well held. He's got his teammate Christopher Rowe up ahead of them. Seeing at the moment, Dennis Van Wielen would start 3rd position as it stands for the second race of the evening. PJ Clijsens right up behind him though, might fancy to take that extra position away from him. Just see now with a nice run as well. Is he going to look for a little move up the inside through this left-hand kink in towards Island Bend?
Oh, that's brave.
He's forcing the issue. He's going to go all the way around the outside. So tricky to do if he keeps the overlap going. No, unfortunately not. Wendell well held though through the, well, around the outside, wasn't it, from Dennis Van Wielen. Came so close to tapping the grass and almost finding himself off the circuit.
How frantic does this feel, GT3's at Oulton Park? It's just brilliant, isn't it? It's amazing that this is where they actually race the British GT Championship in real life at the start of the season. PJ Clijsens is on a mission though. He's really trying to get the better of Dennis Van Wielen. I wonder if they both speak Flemish. Not quite sure. But they'll be probably shouting something at one another. Currently, Chris Jennings is still on for pole position in the Lotus-inspired Lamborghini. He's got Mark Johnson quite close behind him, though. Oh, Heinz Meyer has just had a problem with his Lambo through the chicane. He's been overtaken by Martin Kenyon. Martin having his issue earlier on. But right at the front, only 0.3 of a second in it now. Still 22 minutes to go. So, I mean, they usually say time flies when you're having fun, Ed, but it's not gone by very quickly, that, to be honest with you, but I'm still very excited by all of this because we have such a great mix of cars on the circuit. It's lovely to see it. But these two, well, they're class of the field at the moment. Lewis Ward in the background there in the Mustang. It's the reason that the sun's not shining, to be honest, because it's just filling the skies. Oh, there's been dramas. PJ Clijsens and Dennis Van Wielen have both gone off the circuit. And there has been something go on the exit of turn 1 there. Hopefully not an overly aggressive move. Oh, there was a catch there. He just caught up to him on the exit. That's a scary old moment. How on earth did Dennis Van Wielen keep that car facing the right way? He goes a little bit slow on the exit, and then PJ just catches the back end.
Yeah.
Wow.
Unfortunately, it's a little bit more on PJ just on the exit, not being able to modulate the speed. He tried to go to the inside, but closing. He wasn't trying to go around the outside really, but the closing speed was just catching him off guard on the exit. Just to about keep it going. Hopefully there isn't any lasting damage that's affecting how he's going to be racing. Well, look of things though, has BJ slowed right down to let...
No, this is John Roberts that's slowed down here.
I think Clijsens did also let the Audi pass.
Oh yeah, he has actually, yeah, he has let him back through. That's really nice. Sorry, I didn't see that. Yeah, John getting, I think, a slowdown penalty. But yeah, PJ Clijsens is now back behind Dennis Van Wielen. That's really good of him. Simon Price down the inside of John Roberts. These are two guys that were both in the Euro Truck convoy the other day. Oh, Ryan Penny's off. Penny's McLaren is in the barrier. Gorgeous looking car. Hopefully it still looks just as good. He needs to pick the right base livery. Oh, scattering bits behind him. But still, he's continued on. And Clijsens actually comes into the pits, so too does John Roberts. Now the incident point limit here is quite severe in this championship. They have an incident limit of 20 points. So for the first 15 they get a drive-through penalty. So that's what, 3 4X contacts and 3 off-tracks. And you do get off-tracks a lot around here at Oulton. But that's also only 5 bits of contact in cars that like to be raced closely together. And you're out of the race completely. So I'm wondering whether we will see any disqualifications throughout the campaign.
Absolutely, it's certainly going to be tricky, especially for the first round at Oulton Park, where it is more likely to have a little bit of bumping and barging to try and make the moves. You may be a little bit prone to a few 4X contacts here or there. Basically 4X, if you are unfamiliar to iRacing, is basically you get 4 incident points attributed to you, which are like little strikes essentially against your name, for having what's deemed as significant car contact. Basically, don't hit each other.
Yeah.
It's basically iRacing's way of saying, oi, naughty, don't do that.
Stay away. Here's the battle then for, well, it would have been the battle for pole position just earlier, but it's not anymore. As Mark Johnson slithers his way down the inside of the Lamborghini in that McLaren, somehow makes it through past Chris Jennings. Matt Hoyland has made his way up 10 spots. Great drive by Matt Hoyland so far, and he is now into what will be reverse grid pole position. But he doesn't want to just settle for that, because that's only 1 championship point for where he currently is. He wants to double his tally and get a 2nd point by getting ahead of Chris Jennings. Adam Watson in the chat saying that lapping GT3s at Oulton's is one of the best things. It really is. It's like a little sort of ribbon of concrete roller coaster, because look at all the tiny little bumps and dips that you have here at Oulton. There's so much muscle memory goes into lapping this place. There's a lot of camber, there's a lot of really smooth little bumps. This is just awesome to watch. You can hear the cars bottoming out there actually through the Shell Oil's hairpin. We've got purple sectors coming in from all over the place actually, Ed. We've had a purple sector from PJ Clyson's in Sector 1, and Ben Idris Abdullahi in the Mercedes. He won't be setting a purple sector there, but Sector 4 last time round was the fastest one of the race for anybody. So the Mercedes has some good pace in it as well. He's got Jake Cranstone just ahead of him. He's making a good example of it at present.
Yeah, it's only going very nicely indeed. I'm just going to say though, if you want a good view of it, you do want to go on board with Matt Hoyland and just see how it is to try and overtake around here. How close it is and how little visibility you get of each corner, of each apex when you are right behind. But look at this, sneaking up the inside. Just an unfortunate mistake there from Chris Jennings. A bit wide of the apex and Matt Hoyland. Well, he didn't need to look a gift horse in the mouth twice, did he? He went right for it.
Absolutely did. The big rumble in Merc carries on. Nice little slide on the exit there as well. Brilliant, brilliant bit of kit, this Merc. I'm really glad to see it racing again in GT3s, because for me, the AMG and even the SLS back from a few years ago, it's a real stalwart GT3 car. You can't have GT3 racing without the Mercedes, in my eyes, and it's lovely to see that it's been adopted by a number of the drivers here. 2 of them running in the top 5 as well here. Jake Cranstone, current GT4 Challenge champion, with Ben Idris Abdullahi just behind. Great to see Ben continuing his form from the GT4s as well. He's absolutely on a mission, and he's actually catching up to Jake, I'd argue here. He's looking good.
Yeah, it's looking very nice at the moment for the pace of Ben Idris Abdullahi. Obviously, like you mentioned in the Mercedes, definitely a car that you see in a lot of real-world racing in the GT3 category. Favoured as well by Black Falcon Racing, which tends to race in nearly every single GT3 category they can get their hands on, which is why it's so prominent. It's wonderful to see, obviously, the representation on iRacing as well from the 2 different sort of variations, it's fair to say, isn't it, of this wonderful AMG GT3. But yeah, Ben really does have a lot of pace. He's fighting the car on the exit. It's beefy. It likes to squirm around a little bit, all 4 wheels kicking and screaming as Ben is trying his very best to get through and ahead of Jake Cranstone.
Looks good though, that's all I know. It looks and sounds great, does the Mercedes. I must admit as well, to toot my own horn for a little minute here, I quite like that the windscreen banners all match up and have all worked as well, with the Derbyshire Holiday Homes branding on them. And of course the gorgeous Oris Analytics wing end plates on all of the cars that you can see as well. Also a big shout out to Bespoke Shelters, Alex Johns. You'll see his logos cycling through the top corner of the screen. There's one now. We really do appreciate all of the support from the guys here for the SRM GT3 Winter Tour by Derbyshire Holiday Homes. Drew Fletcher, sponsor himself, is inside the top 10. He'll be happy with his performance so far in the Series 1 Racing Porsche, the same car that he raced in the Porsche Club of Great Britain Sim Racing Series very recently. He's got Tim Perry flashing the lights here. Not quite sure we agree with that much flashing, but still, he's just trying to distract him. It's nice to see the McLaren still going strong, although I say that actually down in 8th place, Tim is the highest placed McLaren in the field. He's got the 2 Ferraris behind him of John Barnes and Lee Berridge in flying formation for Virage. But the McLaren, well, it's got 10 kilos, but it's actually 2 McLarens at the back of the pack at the moment, I'm afraid. John Roberts in 24th place and then Ryan Penny in 25th position. You can see the difference in the base liveries here, because John has got the Pirelli tyres on the car, which has got the yellow tyre writing on it. Just wait till he turns right, and it's a different number font, whereas Ryan Penny's still got the IMSA livery underneath, so it's got the Michelins on it. It doesn't make any difference in terms of performance, it's just the branding and the licensing that the car was designed with, basically.
I think there are some cars that don't have any tyre branding whatsoever. I think the Lamborghinis
I know, I hate
one
it.
of those that have exactly 0 tyre sort of sidewall writing on them, which does sort of make it look, I don't know, it makes it look very sort of simmy and artificial. I love the realism that we get on iRacing with this sort of sidewall writing.
Yeah, definitely. Just makes it look a bit more dramatic as well, makes the wheels look like they're actually spinning really quickly, so I love to see it. Gives you a bit more sense of speed. That's why I do like the Michelin ones actually on Ryan Penny's car, because it's big chunky tyre writing, so it looks very very beefy, and you know, I don't know, adds a bit more colour and flamboyance to watching the car move. Anyway, Tim Perry has just overtaken Drew Fletcher down towards the chicane, hard onto the brakes, through the right, through the left. It's a very tricky chicane, that. There's a lot of undulation there as well, and that final part of it, I mean, we've both driven around it countless times, Ed. It's like there's a magnet on the fence on the outside of there, isn't there? It just wants to drag you off the circuit.
It is such a tricky little complex. For me, my biggest problem was trying to open up that complex as much as possible on the way in onto the brakes, dipping a couple of wheels out onto the grass, which sends you around and into a spin. We've already seen a few drivers try and open up this very narrow circuit a little bit too much already and fall foul of it, but for now it seems to be a little bit more under control, especially with this one, Lewis Ward. He's kind of in his own lonely bubble. Got big gap to the car ahead, big gap to the car behind. Jake Cranstone, who I think is still focusing on keeping Ben Idris Abdullahi behind, those two Mercedes, still locked in their battle as we left them a few laps ago. On board with Lewis, you can see he's definitely not hanging out, not driving pedestrian whatsoever. Really having to make those little corrections as he puts the power down.
Just heard in chat from Adam Watson, fuel may be an issue. Oh, I would have doubted that for a half-hour race, because I thought the sprint... Hang on, I'm sure the sprint setups have nearly an hour's worth of fuel, because don't they do an hour-long race?
I think they do 45-minute races, but there is a pit stop somewhere in there, but usually it's sort of after the 15-minute mark, so I think the cars are fueled essentially at half tanks, but in GT3 endurance racing you can tend to get a stint of around about 1 hour and about 5 minutes, 1 hour and 10 minutes, depending on how much you save, so I'd be very surprised to see drivers pop in for fuel, especially at Oulton Park, where you can, well, you're not really flat out for a lot of the lap, are you, because of how many corners there are and how quickly they come at you.
Well, I was wondering this before, because it seemed like Callum Brandt was short shifting, and yeah, he didn't seem to be completely flat chat behind Arthur for a little bit. Fixed his 50% fuel, so some races might need fuel saving to save it. Alex Gall as well, good to see you in the chat, Alex. He's a driver that's on the reserve list for this championship at present. Well, that's definitely something that we'll have to work out for the next one, because we don't want pit stops at all. This is just going to be straight sprint racing to the checkered flag. We don't want fuel to come into that, so that is something that we'll get looked at. Yeah, we'll definitely figure that out. Oh, Francois Brandet's had an off. He's off the road at Cascades. Not quite sure if that car is damaged. It doesn't look like it. Looked like the left part of the rear wing were maybe... Oh, just clipped the grass on the way down the hill, but again, how many times have you done that, Ed?
Yeah, I've definitely done that more than a few times. It's definitely one of my biggest weaknesses, so I'm not going to besmirch any driver for having that same little error. Mark Johnson, wonderful shot as we look at the rear wing, and the Mercedes looming into the braking zone, but not committing to the move. Didn't really have the overlap, but look at this now. He's all of a sudden found a way up on the inside. Mark Johnson, though, gets contacted and pitched around into a bit of a spin.
I'm not really sure. That was on Matt there, to be honest. I'm not sure. We'll have to have a look back at that one, but yeah, that was unfortunate for Mark. Loses a few positions as a result of that. That was for P13 as well, so that would have been inside the reverse grid positions. Great opportunism that by Matt as well alongside, and yeah, there's just not enough room left on the inside there, I'm afraid. It's not a usual overtaking opportunity, but you do see people go for it, and at the same time just didn't look to me like there was enough room there.
Yeah, unfortunate as well, because he maybe was able to hold on to that position if he just ran a little bit wider and kept that momentum up.
Yeah.
Fortunate, but that's just those fine margins, and in the heat of the moment in the cockpit, you're easily prone to have those minor misjudgments, maybe by a few feet here or there, or even a few inches, and that's what separates a move from being made or ending in contact, as we've just seen. PJ Clyson's now plummeting down the hill through this left-hander, focusing on the exit. Look at the cars up ahead, side by side. He's trying to see if he can get through on John Higgins and Heinz Meyer, but instead finds himself kicked to the curb, or well, to the grass, and fortunately loses out.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure whether that was a case of moving or whether that was a case of, well, we'll have a look again. I don't think there was a big enough gap. It always seemed like John, to me, was coming back over to the right. But again, just one of those miscommunications. These cars go so quickly in GT3 that they are very nimble nowadays. You know, I remember in sort of late 2000s, early sort of 2010s, when GT3 cars were big, old, beefy, really slow, clumsy race cars. You know, you wouldn't get any moments like that because they just simply weren't nimble enough for it. But now they are very different, and they change direction like houseflies. Incredible still to see, though, that the only Corvette in the field is leading this race, and Arthur Thurtle is at the wheel, doing a great job as, ooh, has a bit of a slide. I hope I haven't just jinxed him, because Callum Brandt is looking very ominous in that rear view mirror. And I mean, he's practically completely filled the rear view mirror now, and is this going to be the moment that Callum Brandt makes a move here, Ed? I'm not sure how long he's going to hold back. Around the outside he goes, then into the chicane. Oh, doesn't quite make it work, though. Doesn't quite make it work. Good stuff from Thurtle there, actually. Got the car stopped nicely.
Yeah, I was just holding my breath there because I saw him going around the outside, and while he did have a minor overlap, that was quickly taken back by Arthur Thurtle. So Arthur lives to fight another day, but that's the thing around this circuit, especially at the very top end, when the drivers are really close together. One little mistake, and all of a sudden a very comfortable race can suddenly turn on its head and you're starting to sweat. But thankfully, for Arthur's sake, he was able to hang on that occasion, and now he's got 6.5 minutes to try and weather the storm. Thankfully there's no storms upcoming, even if it is a little bit cloudy out there. I can't see any rain, even though the boys are running on Benedris Abdullahi. Almost just trying to comedy more, I think, just to clear off any dirt and dust that was on his screen. But yeah, I don't think we have any worries or concerns about the threat of rain, so it should be dry running from now till the end of the evening.
Got Ben Chalcraft on our screens here in 11th position in the Spontex CDM Esports McLaren, the sponge livery, yellow and green. 3 places gained for him. He's just trying to catch the 2 Ferraris ahead of John Barnes and Lee Berridge, the 2 boosted motorsport machines. Just 2 cars back with Christopher Rowe between them. We've got Matt Hoyland, who has gained 12 places from where he started. He's on an absolute mission today. Is Matt doing a really solid job in this one. And he's certainly enjoying himself as, oh, Kim Such has had another drama in that Audi R8. There's not a massive amount left of it now, I'm afraid. There's, oh, into the pits. Who was that coming in? That was John Higgins Jr. heading into the pits in the background. Oh, Kim's already had an issue with the Audi, and then is it going to... Oh, as he changes gear... Oh, wow. Bounces up over into the barrier on the right-hand side.
For John Higgins, was that potentially a drive-through penalty from the 4X he may have received earlier on with that contact? I think you mentioned it earlier. Here we go, though. Callum Brandt looking for a move to take back the lead of the race. Arthur Thurtle carrying on, though, carries that momentum all the way around the outside. He should be safe now in towards turn 1 and won't be close enough to make any moves under the brakes, but lap upon lap, Callum is getting quicker and quicker, racier and racier, and really starting to turn the screw on Arthur Thurtle. He did hang back for a few laps, but now I think he maybe, after saving some fuel, knows he's good to go till the end of the race.
Yeah, it seems like he's suddenly launching the attack now, is Callum, and look at this right up behind him. Oh, he's got to compensate, though, through Island Bend, and that's going to cost him time. He was just following a little bit more closely than was comfortable there, and Arthur Thurtle gains himself just a couple of tenths of a second. The gap goes back up to half a second. Now, Lewis Ward, in that big old house brick there, will definitely want the battle to start erupting ahead of him here. The previous double champion of the Sim Racing Magazine GT4 Challenge for Apex Racing Academy will definitely want to get amongst that for a race victories. Oh, Mark Johnson's off. He's had a spin down at Cascades. Manages to recover. Francois Brandet has to take avoiding action. It's Dennis Van Beelen that's currently in 15th place now, Ed. Bit of damage on the front of his Audi, but he is the man that will be in pole position in just less than 4 minutes' time if it stays this way.
Yeah, unless Chris Jennings is able to catch him up, and while Dennis Van Beelen does seemingly have a little bit of damage, you'll have to hope that it won't affect him too much. Chris, he's already gained 1 position so far this race, started 17th up into 16th, could quite easily find himself up 1 further place. But right now I think we have to focus on the front, because yet again Callum Brandt is right up behind Arthur Thurtle. There seems to be a changing of fortunes maybe on the cards. Callum Brandt really does have the pace now at this closing stage of the race.
Yeah, it's getting exciting though, isn't it, at the very front? It seems like definitely Callum's been able to just turn the wick up a bit. I do wonder whether he was sort of sitting behind Arthur earlier and helping work with him to get away from Lewis Ward, knowing how quick Lewis is. And now look, Thurtle's having to go defensive down the inside line. Callum's going to try it around the outside of the Shell Oils hairpin. That would be very heroic, but it doesn't work, unfortunately, Callum. I think maybe he's just put the car in a bit more of a comfortable place there so he doesn't get held up and lose time. But Lewis Ward is definitely closing in on these guys. He's gained 6/10 of a second on that previous lap, actually 9/10 of a second on that previous one. Apparently Thurtle is having to save 2 litres of fuel towards the latter stages of this race, so that's something that we will look at and will get round to. It's a massive shame that that's going to come into play here. Very frustrating, actually, and I do apologise to everyone involved. You do see that, don't you, every so often? I did wonder whether we'd see that tonight. The car's getting a little bit too close to the tyre stacks and losing a bit of bodywork, where there's a slight bit of desync from one sim to the next. Nils Kors had a quiet race, hasn't he, Ed? 6th place for him at the moment. He's just ahead of Tim Perry by a few seconds. Well, it's not had a lot going on.
Yep, started and continued on from where he was on the grid, and at the moment it does seem rather comfortable for him. You can see those lovely Satellite Racing, Chicane Online Racing liveries. It's actually into the pits. Has Nils Kors had to serve a drive-through penalty at the end, or has he maybe got a question of the fuel to worry about? We'll see at the moment.
He's going over to the right.
Over to the right-hand side. He's out of fuel. He wasn't saving. Oh dear.
Well, I'm going to be getting a message about that, and understandably so, because, well, we had it set up so that we thought fuel wasn't a problem. That was what we assumed from the sprints, but that's on me. But that's why we have this championship. We test these things. This is what the Winter Tour is here for. It tests formats, it tests things even for the broadcasts, tests all sorts, and that includes when it comes to setups for what we use with these cars for the drivers as well. But it's given us a fantastic battle at the front here. Look how close these two are together. And now Callum Brandt moves to the outside line. And you know what? Arthur Thurtle's let him go. He said, have it. Have that position, mate. And I think Callum's gone a little bit deep, has he? No. Looked like he was going to go way deep into the corner there. But with a minute left on the clock now, they're going to have 1 more lap to go, I believe, before this race is done. Arthur Thurtle lets Callum Brandt through into the race lead. And we'll see what comes about here as a result of this, because these two have been so close on pace so far. It's a shame that it's going to potentially be decided by that if Arthur has to save fuel. And maybe he was just worried that it'd end up in contact, and he's thinking bigger picture here. He's thinking championship points. Oh, and no, Callum Brandt's in. Callum Brandt has to come in as the white flag comes out. Arthur Thurtle continues on, so too does Lewis Ward. It seemed like out of all of them, Callum was the one that was saving fuel. Wow.
Yeah, I thought so too. Cranston comes in. Who else carries on? Drew Fletcher, I think, is the next driver to come up to the start-finish line. We'll see if he's been able to carry on. He's coming into the pits, but it's the front 4. Arthur Thurtle, Lewis Ward, Ben Idris Abdullahi, Tim Perry. Lee Berridge is able to continue on as well. Finds himself ahead of Callum Brandt. That's really going to affect how the drivers approach the second race, though, isn't it? Now knowing about this fuel issue. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you could see it as an exciting different angle to the series, that, you know, drivers have to race but be conservative, but we don't want people having to save fuel. We want people to be flat out from start to finish, and I can only apologise to all of those that have been involved with this issue. But at the front, Arthur Thurtle is actually going slowly here to save the fuel, and Lewis Ward is looking like a likely race winner, actually, in that Mustang. Would you believe it? Out of all the cars as well, the Ford Mustang, the absolute housing block, still somehow running right behind Arthur Thurtle for the lead with just a few corners left.
Yeah, Mustang's known for their fuel economy. Known the world over for being very delicate with how they sip the fuel. No, it's quite entertaining to see. But I think Arthur should have just about enough left in the tank to come through and take the first race victory of the season in the Winter Tour. Arthur Thurtle wins race 1 ahead of Lewis Ward. Ben Idris Abdullahi for Satellite Racing, Chicane Online Racing in 3rd. His teammate Nils Kaur had to pit, but still sees himself up in 7th position. Wow, my, some late drama really did turn that race on its head. Callum Brandt from the lead of the race having to pit. Tim Perry as well though. What a race from him to come back after that setback earlier on with a 4th place result. Wonderful stuff from Tim.
Yeah, absolutely. The battle is on for 13th and 14th between the two Chicane Online Racing teammates here, Christopher Rowe and Dennis Van Beelen. But behind them, not too far behind, is this man, Matt Hoyland. He started right at the back of the grid in 25th position, but he's going to come through and finish in 15th place. It may only be 1 championship point, but that's going to put him on reverse grid pole position for race 2 of the night in the Mercedes. And he's going to be, well, I was going to say happy about that. Probably more nervous more than anything. And he is, I'm sure, going to be a bit nervous for later on. Now, it is a massive shame what has happened with the fuel, but there's nothing we can do to change that now. Obviously, that will be something we work on for the later rounds of the series. We see here Lee Berridge crawling around the circuit. It seems like Christopher Rowe's definitely still got enough fuel to continue on. But wow, oh wow. That first race of the GT3 Winter Tour by Derbyshire Holiday Homes certainly had a bit of everything there, Ed. There was a lot going on, wasn't there?
Yes, so this is, well, certainly a dramatic way to end the first race of the season. It was having a thought about how obviously we will change things going forward, but as of now, the drivers know exactly what the score is for this second race and they can prepare accordingly. We've got a little bit of time as well between the 2 races, 10 minutes, so the drivers might be able to start to formulate some plans in their mind in the intermediary period.
Hopefully so. We'll have a look while the warm-up session is on at the very first race results of the season then. Arthur Thurtle takes the victory in the Corvette from Lewis Ward, and then Ben Idris Abdullahi finishes on the podium. Tim Perry recovers after his off in the early stages to finish in 4th. Callum Brandt completes the top 5. Jake Cranstone is 6th ahead of Nils Kaur, with John Barnes in 8th and Lee Berridge in 9th. Ben Chalcraft completes the top 10 in the McLaren ahead of Drew Fletcher, PJ Clysons, Christopher Rowe, Dennis Van Beelen and Matt Hoyland, the final points finisher in 15th. He was ahead of Martin Kenyon, John Roberts and John Higgins Jr., with Ryan Penny and Simon Price completing the top 20. Next up we have Heinz Mayer and Chris Jennings, with Kim Such and Francois Brandet 1 lap down. Mark Johnson 2 laps down by the end. He ran out of fuel, I believe, based on what he said earlier in Discord. So we now have to wait and see what the next course of action will be. Obviously, the warm-up session pretty quiet for a little bit now while the drivers all discuss what goes on behind the scenes. So we're going to go for a quick advert break, and we'll be right back with you on Chaz Draycott Media.
4 French drivers at the French Grand Prix trying to win this on the final lap. The 3 wide again, Guillaume down the inside. Guillaume moves across, they're both in front of Milan and Pouget.
Before you know it, we find ourselves here in the very final race of the competition.
And then they see truck racing and they think, this is crazy, you know, these are 5-ton machines, 1200 horsepower brake. Oh, look at that switchback. Oh, he's been bumped and a drift is going off. Ben Gregory now, I love this. 10.5 minutes gone. Senna Lanson tries to go for the race lead.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Hello again everybody, Chaz, Draycott and Ed May here for the Sim Racing Magazine GT3 Winter Tour by Derbyshire Holiday Homes, and after a pretty dramatic first race it's now time for what is a very quiet warm-up session by the look of it, Ed. Only Ben Chalcraft now starting to head out onto the circuit, but the drivers all having a bit of a discussion with the main talking point from that race that the fuel became an issue when it really shouldn't have, so it's going to be a case of now seeing what the course of action is after this round and then moving forward. Obviously we can get it fixed, but it's a big shame that it's affected the race, but I suppose now, oh hello Ben, I suppose now the guys know what the score is at least going into race 2. It may not be how they want it to be, but they know the score I suppose.
Yeah, it does seem to be the case where the drivers are now fully aware of the fuel saving that needs to be had throughout the rest of the evening. Hopefully that won't impact though on the level of entertainment, because it was still a race that gave us some wonderful battles, wasn't it? That little tussle between Callum Brandt and of course the eventual race winner Arthur Thurtle at the very end was wonderful to see. We might see a little bit more of that before the end of the night still.
Yeah, absolutely gutted for Callum Brandt as well, because it has indeed cost him a victory. He said in the Discord that he didn't look until the last lap actually, so yeah, he knew that he was under the impression all the way through that he was fine to go, and so were we. You know, we didn't expect that to become an issue, so obviously as an admin it's an oversight and it'll get fixed for next time, but as of right now there's nothing we can do, so they just have to sort of treat this race as different to the others and then see what the rest of the campaign holds when the racing is going to be flat out. This man is going to be on pole position though, Matt Hoyland. He's going to be a bit nervous for that, I imagine, after having the worst possible qualifying earlier and not getting a time on the board. He starts from the very front of the grid this time round.
Yeah, it's very exciting, isn't it, for Matt Hoyland to now see himself right at the very sharp end of the grid. I tell you what, it has been a heck of a night for him, so hopefully this is going to be a lot better of a race to come. His pace was certainly up there with the very best, so I imagine once we get to the very start of the race he's going to try and disappear up the road before maybe some of those drivers starting further back have a chance to get through the field.
Yeah, indeed. It's nice to see the Mercedes at the front as well once again, actually, because as I said before, It's one of them cars where it's like a stalwart car of GT3 racing. You know, they've been around for so long doing this, from the first iteration of the Mercedes SLS to then the AMG GT3 that came in iRacing back in 2017, and now 7 years later. Obviously, I know this car's been out for a little bit longer than that. We've now got the Mercedes AMG GT3 Evo version. I emphasised the wrong bit of that name, but you know what I meant. Still, we've got the McLaren 720S as the latest GT3 car to come to iRacing as well. Good looking, a good sounding bit of kit. It's a weird noise to describe, isn't it, Ed? Because it does sound like a V8, but it's also a bit of it's high pitch because it's a high revving V8. Mark Johnson loops it into the first corner. That was Tim Perry leaving the pit lane. Luckily, a replacement McLaren has now been dispatched to the circuit. Well, only a minute and a half left of warm-up, so we'll see what the drivers make of this one.
Absolutely, we have to see what the drivers will do, how they might change their approaches. I think as well, though, with a bit more fuel saving at the start of the race, the drivers should be able to really go at it towards the end. We did see as well, I think the drivers get caught out by it more than anything else, so fingers crossed that awareness is going to make it a little bit easier. Ooh. What was that from the McLaren there? Just a massive sort of jump, isn't it, over the curb? The front end's almost got dug in. Oh dear, it's not great.
No.
Not something you want to have for Tim, who's been taking the corner like that pretty much all night, and then hopes that that won't happen in the race, because he might have done a little bit of underfloor damage as well.
Yeah, I hope not for his sake. But that's one of the things about Oulton Park. Really, it's a very commitment-based circuit, isn't it? There's a lot of very narrow parts to it as well, and it's an old school track, so you're either on the tarmac or you're clipping the grass and heading towards a barrier. And then on top of that, you've got the rock hard and never moving tyre stacks that are on the inside of all the chicanes too.
Yeah, I mean, especially coming now into this chicane that we're watching John Roberts, it's so easy just to make one little misjudgment, isn't it, on turning that a little bit too early, colliding into the tyre barriers. But luckily we haven't seen any drivers make that misjudgment. I think a lot of the practice they've been putting in has certainly paid off. But in the race where you can't quite see your braking mark, you can't quite find that turning point, it's easily done.
Yeah, absolutely. We now come to crunch time for the second time this evening, and it'll be a very different approach, I think, from some of the drivers this time round in round 2 of the SRM GT3 Winter Tour by Derbyshire Holiday Homes. It's Matt Hoyland on pole position with Dennis Van Beelen alongside him. Christopher Rowe and PJ Clysons make up row 2. Then it's Drew Fletcher and Ben Chalcraft on the third row. Lee Berridge and John Barnes on row 4. Teammates once again close together. Nils Core is next up with Jake Cranstone completing the top 10. Then it's Callum Brandt and Tim Perry in 11th and 12th. Next up, it's Ben Idris Abdullahi with Lewis Ward behind him and race 1 winner Arthur Thurtle. Martin Kenyon starts 16th ahead of John Roberts and John Higgins Jr. Then it's Ryan Penny alongside Simon Price completing the top 20. Heinz Mayer is next with Chris Jennings alongside, and then it's Kim Such and Francois Brandet, with 25th place being occupied by Mark Johnson. So it definitely looks like rain isn't on the horizon here, Ed. Certainly looks like there's still a bit of cloud up in the sky, but the sun is out for the start of this one. I'm excited to see whether we get rain later on in the season, because it's certainly something that will spice up the racing even further, isn't it?
I hope so. I mean, we don't think we need too much more to spice up the racing from what we saw last time out. Obviously, you mentioned earlier, Chaz, as well, about how nice and clean it was. We'll have to hope for much of the same here for the opening lap, especially with drivers speaking cars being as closely packed as they are here at Oulton Park. Dennis Van Beelen and Matt Hoyland, the drivers to set the pace, to see if Dennis can do exactly the same as what Arthur did on that outside line and get a good getaway to maybe jump up into the lead of the race.
Yeah, we'll have to see who goes for it in the early stages and then tries to save later, or who goes very conservative in the opening laps, because that's the better time to do it when the field is nice and close together. We have a Mercedes and an Audi on the front row here. Matt Hoyland for DXT Motorsports. Dennis Van Beelen and Christopher Rowe could potentially work together here for Chicane Online Racing. Strength in numbers and all that. But for the second time tonight, we get underway at Oulton Park in the Sim Racing Magazine GT3 Winter Tour by Derbyshire Holiday Homes. They're 3 wide in the middle of the pack, and it's the 117 Ferrari that's got an absolute belter of a start. That's Lee Berridge, but he's run wide on the exit. John Barnes, his teammate, has followed suit. That is Tim Perry around in the McLaren. Tim Perry going the wrong way in the 720, and he manages to just about keep it out of everybody else's way. But Matt Hoyland holds his lead through the first couple of corners. And look at the streak of them making their way out of Cascades. It's absolutely excellent. But other than Perry, everybody else seems to have made it through tidy. John Barnes has lost 3 places. No one else has really lost a massive amount so far. John Barnes now losing another position as Lewis Ward somehow manages to fit that Mustang around the outside, side by side on the exit. Gets a great slingshot off the corner and down towards the chicane for the first time. Hoyland, Van Beelen, Kleissens, Berridge and Rowe, the top 5. And then it's Ben Chalcraft in 6th place ahead of Drew Fletcher. Busy start, Ed. Down towards the chicane, it looks like Jake Cranstone's looking back down the inside. And oh, there was a move in the background there. Was that Abdullahi? Yes, it was. He's got no front bumper on that Mercedes again, though. I think this time he's actually cut the front off his... Oh, there's contact with Barnes. He turns in on John Barnes, and, well, the Ferrari gets a clip one way and then batters itself into the barrier the other way. Manages to recover without hurting too many people, I was going to say, but Tim Perry nearly falls by the wayside as a result.
Yeah, Tim Perry with a lot of weight saving done to the rear end of his McLaren. Running a sort of low rear downforce package by the looks of things. There's Drew Fletcher. You can see him on board, just in the Porsche now. A little bit of company in behind, doesn't he, from Callum Brandt, the driver that was so electric in that first race, qualified on pole position. Really put the pressure on Arthur Thurtle to start with. Now look at it already, Callum Brandt up 3 places from the very start. BJ Kleissens now, though, fancies a move maybe on Dennis Van Beelen. You can see he's got the run. It'll have to be a late low up the inside through this kink, which you can't really do. There's not a big enough braking zone to close up that much. Now, though, through men, looks to be all okay. Who's that way off on the circuit? That's Mark Johnson.
Mark nearly
ends up what he was doing up there.
Yeah, nearly ends up in Greater Manchester.
Yeah.
Way off the circuit. Does he just clip the grass on the exit? Oh, it's already gone, and then he loses it the other way. Now, if you keep it pinned up there and you hit that dusty bank on the right-hand side, you actually get flung in the air over the other side of the circuit. It's something we used to do in the touring cars for a bit of a laugh at the end of a race meeting. But I think iRacing in the end made it so that if you do go in the air over that, it sort of deletes you in mid-air and then just sends you back to the pits. So the fun has been ruined. But Matt Hoyland still leads the way in the Mercedes. Then it's Audi, Porsche, Ferrari. So 4 different manufacturers in the top 4. There's 2 Porsches in the top 5 at the moment, with Chris Rowe in 5th place. Don't know what it is about that livery, but the front end really distorts the shape of the Porsche for me. It just looks very odd, but it reminds me of the older, I think it was the 997 version of the Porsche from a few years ago. It had a very ugly front end on it. This one makes it look a bit more open. You can see PJ Kleissens' Porsche just ahead. It's a lot flatter looking. This makes it look almost pointy at the front end, does Chris's car. Speaking of pointing at the front end, he's got, well, I was going to say Ben Chalcraft's McLaren right behind him, but he's already alongside him down the inside into Cascades. Ben gets out of that one. Callum Brandt doesn't get out of that one. Or does he? Well, he has to there. Drew Fletcher squeezing to the inside, saying no thank you. It's great to see such a mix of manufacturers, though, all together on the circuit. Callum Brandt will want to try and take advantage of this battle in front. Simon Price has now decided to visit the Trafford Centre on the exit of Cascades. Back at the front. Still Hoyland, but boy, is he under pressure. He's got a hell of a train behind him, Ed.
One absolute heck of a train, isn't it? And then some. That's sort of a freight train, isn't it, right behind Matt Hoyland? That's not a little passenger one. There is so much action right in behind this DXT Motorsports Mercedes. Dennis Van Beelen for company. This is not the comfortable race that Matt Hoyland was hoping for. Now, though, he just needs to get his head down, doesn't he, Chaz? He can't worry too much about what's going on in behind. He needs to focus on hitting his marks, relying on that good pace that saw him climb up through the field to that 15th place in eventual reverse grid pole position.
Well, he's held his own very well so far. As Tim Perry's race has gone from bad to worse. Oh, that's very broken. That is very, very broken, is that McLaren. That's Callum Brandt off the road. Callum Brandt has had a drama as well, and now Jake Cranstone and Drew Fletcher have both lost a few places. Jake Cranstone off in the barriers, Drew Fletcher with damage, that says guilty. But we'll have to see what happened to the other guys first. Let's just go back to that. Callum Brandt going off the road. He's trying to chase down Drew. The back end's already gone. Oh no. 6 of one, half a dozen the other there, I think. Oh my goodness me. Wow. He was on the brakes, in fairness to Callum there, but yeah, that was not what you want to see. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, it's gone off Callum's car there for some reason. So he goes down the inside, nearly loses it. Drew's there, and then there's a car on his right, and he just gets bounced into him as Drew rejoins as soon as he can, and he is on the brakes. But that is a scary, scary moment. What happens to Tim Perry then? Oh no, I hope he doesn't collect him. Oh.
Oh dear, oh no.
That is, yeah, not good from Callum, that, I'm afraid. And then this is what happened with Jake Cranstone and Drew Fletcher. Drew already had the damage on. Oh, they've just got glued together on the exit. Jake has been pitched into a spin and into the wall. He styles it out nicely, as you'd expect Jake to. I don't know what that rear wing's sticking to nowadays with no rear boot lid, but got a little bit messy in the mid-pack there, didn't it? Everyone seemed a bit flustered.
Yeah, it was just one of those cases where after you've gotten through the first couple of laps, you start to get a little bit antsy. You start to focus on thinking, oh, maybe I didn't have the best start. Maybe I've got to try and make up for it now. And all of a sudden, that's when the incidents can start to creep through. Dennis Van Beelen and PJ Clijstens once more piling the pressure on. Oh, Dennis is wide, and PJ's going to take that opportunity with both hands and up into second place now. Wonderful little move there by the 27 Porsche. Just into turn one, taking advantage of Dennis just maybe missing that turn or carrying a bit too much speed.
Yeah, it's one of those corners really. It's very easy to overdo it through the first corner at Oulton Park because the exit is completely blind. You go over a crest and then the curb suddenly just comes at you out of nowhere. It really does fly in a random direction towards you, as we have Audi battles going on here. Kim Such side by side with Francois Brandet. Frenchman in the middle here with Chris Jennings in the Lamborghini just behind. So it's 3 V10s all standing lovely together. Chris had to just get out of that one there into the Shell Oils hairpin and try and avoid Francois as it all checked up. Down towards the chicane once again they go. Look how tight it is into the chicane here. Really does feel narrow in these big wide GT3 cars. Back to the front once again, and it's still Matt Hoyland. PJ Clijstens was on a mission earlier, wasn't he, Ed? He's definitely one of the pushiest drivers in the field, and he will not go, well, he'll not be, what's the phrase, backwards in going forwards, will PJ?
Yeah, you're looking at it now, he's really putting so much pressure on Matt, but he needs to think about his own fuel as well. It's early on in the race. Well, racing hard is going to be great for maybe a position at this stage. Come the end of the race, that might work against you. Look at Lee Berridge now, taking advantage of Dennis Van Beelen running a little bit wide, wasn't he, out of that final corner. Lee, I think just quite happy to settle for focusing more on the exit. Now though, is there any way past? Once more, the Audi trying to be as wide as he possibly can. He's found a little bit of a gap up the inside. Can Lee get the exit? Yes, he does. Lovely move up in the third. Oh dear, what's happened to Martin Kenyon? And again, Arthur Thurtle, the Altitude Esports car's not having a great time, and he's lost his rear wing. That's going to need a trip to the pits. And all of a sudden, Arthur Thurtle, race 1 winner, out of contention for potential points. Just get stuck on the exit again.
Yeah, how many times have we seen that? So Arthur to the inside line. I mean, he's on the white line on the apex. It's not like Martin doesn't leave enough room. There is just a car's width, but the two of them just get glued together in that horrible fashion that we see a little bit too often here on iRacing these days, and two of them end up very aggressively into the barrier. I don't think any of them particularly did anything wrong. Maybe a little bit more room could have been left on Martin's part, but it wasn't an unfair amount of room, I'd say.
No, I think it's, you know, they get the room that was given was fair. It's just a case of, again, iRacing, when the cars make contact, they have a sort of strange tendency to lock together, which is unfortunately, I think, the main contributing factor to that incident. There's Van Beelen losing out again, running wide. He's just struggling to keep the car within the white lines on that corner, and it's so important because if you do make those mistakes, you run the risk of losing out on the run into turn 1, where you're so vulnerable to a move being made on you, maybe down the inside or even around the outside, as we've seen so many drivers pull that off successfully. Ben Shuttlecraft on board with a lovely sound of his McLaren. He's got an even beefier car right behind him. Lewis Ward in the Ford Mustang GT3 rides up there with him. I think for now though, Lewis is going to just fill the mirrors but not really commit to any moves at all on the exit. Thought for a moment we were going to see a move as Ben Shuttlecraft, I think, got through on Christopher Rowe.
That is Arthur Thurtle off into the barriers, and unfortunately I think his race is done. This is Christopher Rowe. Whoa, way off the circuit. That's going to be a slowdown penalty as well. Even if you go fully onto the AstroTurf on the right hand side there, you do get sort of forced into a slowdown. I think that's maybe what he was serving, which is why the guys behind suddenly caught him so quickly. Ben in the McLaren, yeah, does get the run on the exit, and yeah, I think Chris was just trying to stay out of the way at that point. Lewis Ward also going through. Did Nils Core make it? Yes, he did. Back to live pictures, and Ben Chalcraft currently in 5th place. He's told me not to expect much from him for this season, driving for Spontex CDM Esports, but he's doing a mighty fine job here of just surviving, making it work. There you go, I've jinxed it now. We did that actually. Ed and I both raced with Ben in the ESR GT4 series as well, the sprint series there, and we all had a bit of a bruising evening of it last night, to say the least. Ben had a good race 1 and then had a rough time in races 2 and 3, and I think I had a decent race 1 and 2, but then race 3 was my Achilles heel, and well, Ed, you had a torrid night, didn't you?
My pace was good, my qualifying was good, and then it was all downhill from there, so I can say that my qualifying was nice, and yeah.
Once it came down to the actual racing, it went to pot.
No, yeah, it went to pot a little bit, unfortunately. Oh well, though. On to the next one. You never know what the next race has in store for you, and hopefully a lot of the drivers that have had a little bit poorer luck out here tonight can have that same attitude. You know, on to the next one. It is, of course, a very experimental winter tour where there are obviously opportunities for slight changes, slight tweaks throughout the course of the season, not just for in terms of setups, but also in terms of just format, the way we approach things. It's what we use these championships for, isn't it? These winter tours is a way to sort of trial run a few things. It's where we first introduced all sprint races to the format, isn't it, for Sim Racing Magazine, which seemed to go down a treat. So hopefully we'll see if the drivers enjoy the GT3s as much as we currently are watching them up on screen. Matt Hoyland once more, maybe not enjoying having to defend as much as he has to do from PJ Kleisens. New Barrage up there with him as well. Dennis Van Beelen, not far back either. It's definitely, the train has sort of broken apart a little bit, but the carriages are reforming once more.
Yeah, indeed. It's great stuff though to watch. And the thing is as well, like I say, we've got such a great mix of cars all together. I mean, look at this, top 5, 6 cars now is all different. Mercedes, Porsche, Ferrari, Audi, McLaren, Ford, and it's nearly side by side for the lead. PJ Kleisens looks to the left hand side. Now Lee Berridge had an accident in the first race towards the end, but that's put him quite high up the reverse grid and now into 3rd position outright. Not a fantastic amount of visibility from this Ferrari, to say the least. It's a very narrow, long windscreen. But you can see the difference in run out the corner there is incredible. That's another thing to think about this season, is that we're going to see the strengths and weaknesses from many of the different cars at different circuits that we head to. We've got a lot of tracks that are narrow and twisty, and we've also got a lot of tracks that were sort of wider and faster as well. We go to Silverstone a couple of times, go to the likes of Donington Park, Brands Hatch also on the list, even Snetterton, which is in the midpoint of the season. That'll be an exciting one to see. As absolute traffic jam down here in the chicane. John Roberts stuck behind the 2 Series 1 Porsches of John Higgins Jr. and Drew Fletcher. Ben Idris Abdullahi just going through for a second there. But I love how quickly things can go one way then the other in GT3 cars. You know, you can be right up behind somebody because of the speed of it and the intensity of it. One mistake just completely throws an absolute hand grenade into a battle, because look at that. One mistake in front now and suddenly John Roberts is back with these 2 Porsches once more.
It's a beautiful thing about this race, and also how competitive it seems to be already. It's the one thing we love about Sim Racing Magazine. It's not just how wonderful and friendly in the community that we've been able to sort of help cultivate, but also just how competitive it is up and down the field. Everyone seems to have someone at a similar pace level that they can race with, and as a result, we on a broadcast are never short of battles to follow, are we?
No, definitely not. You know, we've got a lovely community, great bunch of people in here that are all so lovely to one another as well. It's great to see them all battling on the circuit like this. Matt Hoyland, PJ Kleisens, Lee Berridge and Dennis Van Beelen, top 4 cars separated by just a second at the moment, and then Lewis Ward behind. I'm going to take every opportunity I can to go on board with this Ford Mustang just to listen to the absolute, it's an assault on the senses being inside this car, but what an amazing noise. Seems like Lewis really fuel saving there actually. That's an element of these races. that we will have to look at. And these drivers know that now. Obviously they come into this second race knowing what the score is. Bit of a bounce and a shimmy over the curb on the exit of Knickerbrook. Fantastic story behind why that corner is named so, but it's not repeatable on broadcast. But Matt Hoyland, well, he's held on really well in this, I can't even get my words out. He's held on really well in this Mercedes so far. Just into the second half of the race now, though. And once again, they may only be half an hour, but they don't really fly by, do they? It definitely won't for Matt.
Absolutely not. I think though Lewis Ward is in one of the best positions to save all of that fuel. He's got a bit of a gap to a car behind him. At least he did for a period, but now all of a sudden Nils Cora's right up there with him. He's got so many cars up ahead of him that he can afford to lift and coast because of the extra speed he's getting in the slipstream zones before he gets to the braking areas. So for now, Matt Hoyland is the one that's basically punching a hole in the air for all of the drivers in behind. PJ Gleisens needs to be careful because he's riding very close behind the rear wing of that Mercedes, and the Mercedes, wide as it is, can obscure the view, isn't it, into some of those braking zones and those sort of reference points used for turning.
Yeah, that's the thing. You have to be really, really careful because of just how narrow this circuit is as well. I mean, we go on board with PJ Gleisens. This gives you a bit more of a view, actually, to what more than what the drivers will see. They'll have a much narrower field of view. They'll be looking much further ahead of them rather than having this sort of wide panoramic view that we have for the sake of the broadcast. But you know what, considering how, I mean, they used the word pushy to describe PJ Gleisens earlier. It was maybe a bit unfair because he wasn't really pushing people out of the way, but it just looked like he was very urgent everywhere on the circuit. And despite that urgency that we saw earlier, he's been really respectful so far, sitting behind Matt Hoyland, attacking when necessary, but not overdoing it. He's not one of these drivers that just tries to send it every single corner, you know. He's been patient at the right time here. It's good to see it.
Yeah, I think as well, especially in the Porsche, you are sitting quite low in the car as well. It's not a very high sort of seating position. So when you have a big Mercedes up ahead of you, you are stuck for visibility. But look at how similar the lap times are. 2 thousandths apart, a little bit close on the exit. Matt Hoyland and PJ Gleisens yet again, nose to tail. Yet one more lap. 12 minutes to go, so Matt Hoyland has, well, he'll be hoping, gotten through the worst of it, onto the homeward stretch. They've done over half of the race now. Nils Court, well, he's in 6th place, can see that the race victory, the race lead is only 1.6, 1.5 seconds up the road. There's so many bodies, so many cars in the way that he needs to get a bit of a shift on now if he's to try and win the race.
Yeah, he's just got to keep his eyes forward here, not worry about the rear view mirrors. There may not be many position changes going on here, but it's still very exciting stuff because it's the sort of deadlock effect of this. You know, who's going to crack first? Who's going to be the one to make a mistake? Because let's not forget that this is not a circuit where it's easy to get a car around cleanly, and they don't have a lot of incident points to play with either. Let's have a quick shout out as well to our championship sponsors. Thanks very much, of course, to Derbyshire Holiday Homes, the title sponsor of the championship, which is why it is now named the SRM GT3 Winter Tour by Derbyshire Holiday Homes. Thanks also to Oris Analytics, Heinz Mayer and his wonderful band of people once again supporting the series as PJ Gleisens has another look down the outside, and again Matt Hoyland covers the inside line, and we're back into a stalemate as they cross the line again. Alex Johns also, big thanks to Alex and Bespoke Shelters for being the third sponsor of this championship. We hope you're all enjoying the show so far here on Chaz Draycott Media. Chaz Draycott and Ed May in the commentary box, and we're certainly enjoying having GT3 cars on our screens once more. But still, oh, that looks like a run for PJ. Wow, he has to almost get out of the way of Matt. Almost evasive action there as they head down towards Island Bend side by side, and PJ Gleisens through into the race lead. Well, it was a case of when, not if, I think, with no disrespect meant towards Matt. But PJ was knocking on that door. Now it's going to be interesting to see how he gets away, Ed.
He's got a lot of pace, I think. But obviously, is that going to be at the detriment to his own fuel saving? Was maybe Matt Hoyland backing up the pack because he was having to save some fuel? A lot more, obviously, because of his position as the lead car. This is Lewis Ward going for a move on the inside and able to get the stick. And then you can see Nils Court trying to follow through. Just not quite able to make that move on Dennis first time around. Obviously, teammates, nearly enough teammates, aren't they? The Chicane Online Racing and Satellite Racing partnership being formalised this season. Signals might be on the radio to Dennis if he feels like he's a little bit quicker. See if there are any team orders, of course. Maybe not at this early stage of the championship, because they do have their own battles to fight, and they can't really think about things too early on, can they, when there's an entire season still to come.
Yep, 7 more race meetings after this, and 2 races in each, half-hour races every time. And as we've alluded to, we will obviously get around to fixing the fuel issue that we discussed earlier on. But after this, in a week's time, well, a week and a bit, because in a week's time, unfortunately, we will not be broadcasting the action live on the night. We'll be doing it the day after. On Wednesday, the 13th of November, we'll be heading to the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit, which is going to be even more than this, I think, in terms of action, because it's even narrower, it's even more undulating, and it's even more unforgiving, I'd argue, is Brands Hatch's. Oh, John Barnes has had an off on the exit of the first corner in the Ferrari. We then go to Donington Park National on the 19th of November, then Silverstone on the new international layout. That'll be a really good race meeting, I think, because we'll get so many laps out of that place. And then we head to Snetterton for the final race before week 13 on iRacing. They have what's known as a leap season this time round. They have 14-week seasons, so we won't be racing on the 10th of December. Then we come back here to Oulton Park on the Island circuit on the 17th. Then we have 2 weeks off for Christmas and New Year. And then we come back on the 7th of January for Donington Park's Grand Prix circuit. And then we end the championship at Silverstone as well, with the Grand Prix circuit there. The modern day Grand Prix circuit as well, so the rubbish one. Oh, that's a lovely little cut one way then the other there from Lee Berridge. Doesn't quite make it work though.
Not quite though, is it? He's definitely got a lot of pace, especially through that area of the circuit. That final sector, Lee does seem to be coming alive, which helps him out potentially in towards turn 1. But look at this, now he's got more pressure in behind than in front. Lewis Ward fancying a little move on the exit, wasn't it, of turn 1. Lee was, I think, able to cover him off, well, within the rules of racing. Just about. PJ Clyson's though, he's checking out up ahead, isn't he? Now 2 seconds clear of Matt Owen, so Clyson's having a really nice time things.
Yeah, I think with the fact that he was sat behind for so much of the race, he's been able to save enough fuel to then leap forward, and now he's just able to go flat chat to the checkered flag. We're right on board now with Nils Core, and you can hear the rumble under the bonnet of that Mustang. Doesn't give it the rasp that it normally gets everywhere else. It's a great noise though, the whine and the whirs of this machine sounding great here on iRacing. Dennis Van Beelen a little bit deep into the chicane, but just because of the natural check up in front of him, he's not going to lose a huge amount on. Then I'm probably going to jinx that. He's going to lose a position to Nils Core now. The two of them working together, they'll be chatting away in Discord, and I believe Nils will be let through here if he keeps this around the outside into Druids. No, they're definitely not going to work together. They are going to fully battle the massive Mustang against the tiny little Audi. But then again, look at the gap now in front to Lewis Ward. 1.1 seconds as Lee Berridge down the inside once more, and Matt Hoyland yet again not making it work. This is great to watch though. He's just trying to bang that door down now. He's fed up of sitting behind him.
Yeah, and that's also, I think, helping out PJ, and that's why the gap has grown so big, because Matt Hoyland is really having to defend, which is compromising his pace more than anything else. Just giving PJ that clear air and the clear track. That last lap, it was 9/10 quicker than everyone else in behind him. Such is the pace of, well, the difference of pace by having just no one to worry about battling and having to defend, isn't it? It's wonderful stuff. PJ Clyson's, it's all working out for him as we come to the final 6 minutes now of the race. There's John Higgins right up in behind Ben Idris Abdullahi. Ben is doing a great job to keep this car going despite the front end damage. He really needed a lot of front end here at Oulton Park with all of those corners, and John just getting caught out a little bit from a differential in speed, just coming through the hairpin.
Yeah, John, a real world racer through and through, it seems. Absolutely pushing on now to try and get the most out of this Porsche, wanting to get past Ben Idris Abdullahi's Mercedes, but as Ed rightly pointed out, a bit of damage on Ben's car will mean his pace is slightly reduced. He got a third place finish actually in the first race of the night, got a podium, so he's certainly off to a good start for his championship campaign. So they head back up the hill now. Just 5 minutes to go here, and it's PJ Clyson still leading the way after making it clear He's now disappeared off up the road. Matt Hoyland next up in the Mercedes. Then it's the Ferrari of Lee Berridge, and then Lewis Ward leading the Ford contingent at the moment ahead of Nils Kort. Dennis Van Beelen, the highest placed Audi. Ben Chalcraft, the highest placed McLaren. He's just coming up over the hill there for Spontex CDM Esports across the line with 4 minutes and 40 seconds left. These two still absolutely together now. John one way then the other, trying to find his way around that big old Mercedes. But you know what, that Porsche is quite a big car as well these days. There's a lot of bodywork, a lot of real estate on that thing. It's got some fantastic hips on it. As I think no, get it out, Chaz. Ben Idris Abdullahi sort of lets him go there, I think. Maybe backs out of that one and says, bit too aggressive for my liking. Maybe he's close on the incident point limit. But John Higgins Jr. is now in front of the Frenchman as they head up to the Shell Oils hairpin once more. 9 places gained for John Higgins Jr. as well in this race. The biggest mover is actually Mark Johnson. He's into a point scoring position. 10 places gained. So too actually Lewis Ward has gained 10 spots as well. So some solid drives through the field here that have pretty much gone under the radar.
Really definitely flying under the radar, some of these amazing drives up and down the field, like you say, Lewis Ward. Beautiful sounding kit again every time we come on board. It does sort of take your breath away just a touch. Now though, I think another great driver's got to be from Lee Berridge. He's been putting a lot of pressure on Matt Hoyland. Matt Hoyland though, to give him credit, we've been following him a lot throughout this race, and for good reason. He's been defending so cleanly, so strongly for much of the race. He tried to keep PJ at bay, but in the end it just proved a little bit too much. But now he's got 3 minutes and Lee Berridge to deal with.
John Higgins Jr. is continuing on this charge past chicane and line racing cars here. He's just gone past Christopher Rowe after an extra lap. He's really on the pace at the minute. So he makes another position. Moves up into 8th place. He's now joint biggest mover in the field with Mark Johnson and Lewis Ward. Seems like Drew Fletcher also going past Ben Idris Abdullahi, is he? No, actually not at this point. Through Cascades, tries to tuck it in on the exit. Drew's raced here in the real world in the MX-5s. So he knows the place well outside of iRacing, but obviously in the Porsche 911 992 GT3R, it's a very different kettle of fish. Looks down the inside, or tries to go for a move, or tries to at least scare Ben out of the way. But that doesn't work. Ben doesn't get scared by anybody, does he, Ed? We've seen him in some fantastic battles in the GT4 Challenge.
Some absolutely wonderful storylines, wonderful battles like you were mentioning all throughout the field. I say John Higgins' performance up 10 places is wonderful. Same with Lewis Ward's. I'm a big fan of Lee Berridge, obviously, of what he's been able to pull off so far this evening. He said this season, but so far this evening it's been great for him. Though that gap in 5 seconds, his consistent quick pace as well is something that's just unmatched by anyone else. Comes over the line. This won't be the final lap. We will have one more after this.
Yeah.
Well, that maybe affect everyone's fuel strategy, going a lap longer than anticipated.
Well, John Higgins Jr. is heading into the pit lane. I don't think that is for incident points. Seemed like he was pushing on when some other cars around him were trying to fuel save, which is maybe where the sudden surge in pace came from. But there's a few cars heading into the pits now. PJ Clysons is still the race leader, don't worry. But John Higgins Jr. has been through the pits and now heads back out. And there you go, the timing tower sorts itself back out. Look at this for second place. Matt Hoyland holding on to this second position so well in that Mercedes. The Ferrari and the 2 Mustangs definitely fill in the mirrors. It's a gorgeous looking Ferrari from the front, so at least he gets to look at the right end of it. Because if we went on board with Lewis Ward and looked at the back of it, well, I mean, it almost makes me want to be sick as much as the front of that BMW, to be honest with you. But still, big check up into the chicane. And bit of a moment there for Berridge, and Lewis has to get on the anchors as well, nearly loses the back end. That shows you, even on the high downforce setups here, how much of a knife edge these things are on, really, Ed. They are properly on the limit of adhesion.
Yep. Even those big beefy cars do have a lot of kick and sort of slide to them. They're not all just understeery monsters. They are a little bit dainty and a little bit sort of pointy at times when they want to be. Then there's Van Beelen. Fancy.
Hoyland's in.
It's on to the pits. Hoyland he spent so long, didn't he, out ahead leading, that he just wasn't able to use any cars to slipstream off of. And unfortunately, that's sort of been the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of his defence, which is a crying shame because he was definitely on for some strong points considering the way that his night started. That would have been a great way to end it.
Yeah, it's a massive shame for Matt Hoyland, but you know what? He can hold his head high after that one and show that, you know, the defensive drive that he's put in there will definitely be one that he will remember for a long time, especially with how qualifying went for him as well. He'll be over the moon with that. There was a car going slowly there. I think that was Kim Such's Oris Racing Audi. This now puts Lee Berridge in second position. Lewis Ward in third place. He's going to be hoping for 2 second places on the night as Lewis Ward. He's gained 11 spots so far. Mark Johnson has now gained 14 in his McLaren. He's having an absolute amazing drive. Car 11 up to P11 from last place on the grid from 25th. So long may that continue for Mark. He's having a good night. Well, he's turned his night around anyway after running out of fuel earlier. Got the battle still going on for second place, but further up the order, 5.5 seconds clear after really playing a blinder here. He had a bit of a scruffy first race, but I'm sure he won't mind me saying that because PJ Clysons rounds the last corner in the Porsche and wins round 2 of the season in the SRM GT3 Winter Tour by Derbyshire Holiday Homes in fantastic style. Lee Berridge next up, Lewis Ward in third place ahead of Niels Core in the Mustang. Dennis Van Beelen completes the top 5. Ben Chalcraft finishes in 6th place, and Drew Fletcher is going to be next across the line in 7th. Christopher Rowe 8th. John Roberts gains 8 places to finish 9th, and Matt Hoyland is still going to get a top 10 finish after all of that. Fair play to him, but hats off to Mark Johnson. What a drive that is after a tough start to his evening. 11th in the race after 25th on the grid. Callum Brandt recovers towards the end of that one to only lose 2 places from where he started, and that's John Higgins Jr. squirting out of the final corner to get ahead of Chris Jennings' Lamborghini as it splutters over the line. He still gained 7 places as well. Ryan Penny's McLaren was next up. Arthur Thurtle in the Corvette. Well, he'll want to forget that second race. So too will John Barnes in the boosted motorsport Ferrari. And then Heinz Meyer also will want to forget that one.
Deary mate. That was a race of mixed fortunes, wasn't it, for a lot of the grids? It sort of turned on its head. A lot of the drivers that had great races in the first one seemingly not having the same fortune in the second. The only driver that seemed to is Lewis Ward, who has now 2 podiums to his name. Second in the first race, third in the second. Very good way to kick off the championship fight though, isn't it, with 2 podiums. So certainly will be leaving here tonight as championship leader. Of course, apologies to the drivers for the mix-up with setups. We weren't really anticipating the fuel being a concern with the sort of sprint setups. We imagined that they would be fine enough for the 30-minute races. But of course, that's why we have this Windsor Tour, for tweaks to be made, and that's definitely going to get rectified before next week's race.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of discussions and tweaking to be going on between now and then, and obviously we will give you updates as that comes around. But PJ Clysons wins on the road here at Oulton Park in the second race of the season. Lee Berridge completes a podium finish for him. He'll be really pleased with that one after his first race. Lewis Ward has his second podium of the night. Niels Core in 4th place. I think that's his second top 5 of the evening as well, or did he finish 6th earlier? Dennis Van Beelen finishes in 5th either way. Ben Chalcraft is 6th ahead of Drew Fletcher, Christopher Rowe, John Roberts and Matt Hoyland, who gets a top 10. That is a real case of the score sheet at the end of the night not telling you the full story. Hoyland was amazing in that race. So too was Mark Johnson. 14 places gained for him from 25th on the grid. Ben Idris Abdullahi was next up in 12th ahead of Callum Brandt, John Higgins Jr. and Chris Jennings. They were the final point scorers. Then it was Ryan Penny ahead of Arthur Thurtle and John Barnes. Heinz Meyer and Simon Price complete the top 20. And following them we had Kim Such, Francois Brandet, Tim Perry, Martin Kenyon and Jake Cranstone out of the race in the early stages. So we'll still go our usual ways, Ed, and find a driver or two to try and speak to after that one. Although, for some reason, yes, the session for a moment there wasn't playing ball for just a minute. We'll obviously cue the music and we'll chat to a driver or two about how their night went. We do have a few people waiting in the wings. Why don't we actually, you know what, we'll start this with the man that I'm sure everybody wants us to speak to after that. Matt Hoyland joins us in the box. Matt, first off, commiserations to how the race ended, but you must have been loving having that battle all the way through, especially because you qualified last, so then, you know, ended up on pole for race 2.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever worked so hard as I did in that race. Obviously, with the fuel being as it was in race 1, I made the decision that I was going to try and hold the lead on the first lap and then just go full fuel save mode, and just try and build a train, and hopefully everyone will slow each other down. But I'm so disappointed that I still didn't have enough at the end. But yeah, I had a blast trying to keep the guys behind me. I was trying to be as harsh on defence as possible without pushing it too far, and I think for the most part it was fair. Obviously PJ found his way through in the end, but that Porsche was filling my mirror for a good 15-20 minutes of that race.
I was going to say the fact that it's bright pink probably doesn't help either as well. He certainly wasn't backwards and going forwards, was PJ, but still, it was great to see you battling up there, Matt. How did the Mercedes feel tonight on that setup? Because I know it's a fixed setup series, so sometimes it's a little bit different to what people run elsewhere.
Yeah, the car didn't feel too bad. It was a little bit snappy on occasion, which I think I struggled with in race 1. But race 2, being able to set the pace and play to my strengths a little bit, it was actually quite good. I also found that it's really strong on the, well, I say the straights. There isn't really many straights here, but when you do get a chance to open it up, it really does pull quite quickly, especially if you're in a tow. So I'm hoping once we get to some of the quicker tracks in the form of Silverstone and maybe even Donington and stuff like that, I'll be able to make use of that on some passes. But yeah, obviously having that bit of extra straight line speed and it being such a tight track made it quite a bit easier to keep everyone behind for as long as I did.
Well, it was great fun for us to watch from up here, Matt, and obviously we hope that continues for the remainder of the season. Is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out to before you go?
Yeah, I'll give a shout out to Martin and Francois. Obviously, neither of them had the evening that they'd want. Hopefully we'll come back stronger next time. Obviously today it's tea as usual, but we're representing on his own this time. We're not got an army of us, so yeah. Hopefully this is a good performance to start with, and we'll keep building on it.
Well, it was great to speak to you, Matt. Thanks again, and hopefully we'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Yeah, thank you guys. Cheers.
Matt Hoyland there, having to work so hard for that one there, Ed. It's a massive shame that the fuel determined his race as well there in the second one, but because he was so far up at the, so long at the front of the field, he was just spearheading the way, wasn't he? So he had no chance to save fuel.
Nobody to sort of hold his hand and help save the fuel with him. No, the buddy system was not working in Matt Hoyland's favour whatsoever, and it is incredibly harsh, but hopefully he finds himself in that position later on in the season and he doesn't need to worry about fuel saving and he can defend like his life depends on it.
Well, I know that somebody that's going to be a fan of fuel saving after tonight is Lee Berridge, who joins us in the comms box now. Lee, one of the only Ferraris in the field tonight, and I mean, you certainly made it look good out there in the boosted motorsport colours. How did you feel like your night went there with the added twist that no one expected?
Do you know what? I'm going to thank my team because halfway through the first race, I think John called up and said, I don't think we're going to make it. You're going to have to fuel save. So me and John Barnes were fuel saving like hell. And do you know what? I lost out on P5 in that first race because I stupidly got on the throttle too early coming out of the chicane and trying to defend the chaps that had pitted and knocked myself back to 9th. So I could have had 2 wicked results. But do you know what? I'll take that. The whole way through, I was just like, sip, 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 sip on that fuel. And it paid off.
Well, I was going to say the Ferrari sounds like a Hoover, so is it just powered by electricity anyway? Because it certainly it doesn't make the most exciting noise, does it?
It really doesn't, and I don't think I would have made it to the end if I didn't have a bit of slipstream.
I was going to say, because a lot of people, you don't really consider Oulton Park as a slipstream circuit, but some of the higher speed sections, they really do make a difference in places like this. And obviously you've got heavy braking zones to consider as well, haven't you?
You have, but actually I was using the heavy braking zones to my advantage by lifting and coasting nice and early and then braking late to then keep my position relevant to the car in front. I was happy to stay behind the top 2 chaps, but you know, all credit to PJ. How he managed to get that car to the end with that level of pace was beyond me.
Yeah, it's beyond us as well, mate. Don't worry about it. You're not the only one.
Yeah, don my hat to him.
Well, it was certainly a great night in the end for you, Lee, and it's good to see you back on our screens once again in another one of the leagues. Is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out to before you go?
Oh, just you chaps. Phenomenal effort, as always. What you bring to iRacing is top-notch.
Well, thank you very much, Lee. Means a lot to hear that. Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome, chaps.
Look forward to seeing you again soon, mate. Cheers.
See you next week.
And very quickly, Ed, we'll jump straight into the next one and we'll speak to our race winner from that one, because Lee just said, PJ, that he doesn't quite know how you got it to the end while going that quickly. Can you spill the beans and tell us how?
Good evening, everyone. First of all, well, I just had to save quite a lot the first few laps, like half of the race or even the first 20 minutes. I was sitting behind Matt, like a bit thanking Lee as well for not attacking me, because I was like lifting way ahead, and I already said it to Matt as well in Discord, that even with 10 minutes to go when I managed to overtake him, I still had to be cautious and safe to get to the end. So yeah, it was basically saving fuel from the start, coasting into every heavy braking zone, and yeah, that worked out, thankfully.
Well, hopefully with the fuel fixed for later rounds of the season, how confident are you feeling in your pace? Because even in the first race, it seemed like you had the pace to beat a lot of the drivers in the field. You were right up there.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to just drive flat out. I felt I had the pace. It was a bit of a shame. I had a bit of an incident during qualifying. I went back to the pits and I tried to request a new car, but instead I pressed the other blue button that said end qualifying. So that put me like way at the back. So yeah, also an incident with Dennis, for which I fully take responsibility, made me had to pit, so I had clean air. And I noticed that it was a bit easier to do fast laps, not having to save fuel as well, because I also had to pit to repair the damage. So yeah, that was the cause of having quite good pace the first race. So yeah.
Well, it was great to watch, PJ, and it's obviously lovely to have you back on our screens again as well. It's been a long time since Ed and I commentated on you, so lovely to have you back on. Is there anyone that you'd like to give a quick thanks to while we've got you on the broadcast?
Well, first of all, you guys, because I love the broadcast. Even when I wasn't racing, I was watching the races. And it's nice to be a part of this community again, and to take part in the races. And I also like to thank Lewis Ward, who lured me into joining SRM again. So yeah, he's the main responsible person for that. Yeah.
Well, it's great to have you, like I say, PJ. Lovely to see you back on our screens once more, and well done on the victory, and hopefully we'll speak to you next week.
Thank you very much.
I've just realised, Ed, as I've said that, we're not going to speak to anybody next week, because we're going to be doing the broadcast on the Wednesday and not on the Tuesday. So we'll just have to see. We'll have to get the results early, or once we get the results, to see if anyone's around to pre-record or like post-record an interview. Still, what a night of racing though, regardless of the issue with the fuel and the setups, which will be rectified. I think that was a fantastic start for the series, and you know what, considering some of, and this is not a dig at ESR, considering some of the GT3 racing that we've both seen in the past, that was amazingly clean for a first round of the campaign, wasn't it?
Considering some of the officials I've seen, it was squeaky. It was really, really good from a lot of the drivers, especially at Oulton Park, which is a track that, being as narrow as it is, as well with the barriers being as close as they are, they're prone to massive pile-ups, so we didn't really see any of that. A few little bits here and there, but they were more isolated than sort of a systemic issue, which is great to see, and hopefully we can carry that forward into the next race. But obviously, like you say, Chaz, we won't be there live, but we'll do an as-live broadcast. I think we've tried to figure it out. It's going to be on Wednesday.
Yes, yeah, it should be on Wednesday the 13th of November. Ed and I will be watching it as a replay file and trying to do what we can with that from there. But that's going to be all from us here on Chaz Draycott Media tonight for the SRM GT3 Winter Tour by Derbyshire Holiday Homes. Thanks once again to all the drivers, everybody for taking part, and of course everyone that's involved in the series and our sponsors, Derbyshire Holiday Homes, Oris Analytics and Bespoke Shelters. Thanks once again to you as well, Ed, and thank you everybody for watching. We'll see you in just over a week's time time when we head to Brands Hatch for rounds 3 and 4 of the SRM GT3 Winter Tour by Derbyshire Holiday Homes. See you then.
Four French drivers at the French Grand Prix trying to win this on the final lap. They're 3 wide again. Guillaume down the inside. Guillaume moves across. They're both in front of Milan and
But
Pouget.
before you know it, we find ourselves here in the very final race of the competition.
And then they see truck racing and they think, this is crazy. You know, these are 5-ton machines, 1,200 horsepower brake. Oh, look at that switchback. Oh, you can look and the drift is going off. Back there, go on board with Ben Gregory now. I love it. 16.5 minutes gone. Senna Lanson tries to go for the race lead.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head to head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.